Hi everyone, Anna-Marie Lombard here, CEO and founder of Sensory Intelligence Consulting, and very happy today to share my time and the space with you with Jacqui Edgar. She's one of our associates and one of our licensed users. She's done our 3-day practitioner's course many moons ago and has been associated with us for quite some time. Just briefly, our associates in the license group was put together to assist in more people having access to our tools, and particularly the Sensory Matrix as a self-development tool. And also a lot of our licensed users like Jacqui uses it in their occupational therapy practices, but it can also be used in a psychology or a coaching practice to add to their toolbox of users. So the Sensory Intelligence approach is highly focused around self-awareness, self-regulation, self-development. And I think never like in today's day and age with COVID-19, with so much uncertainty, stress, people are feeling overwhelmed, we don't really know what's going to happen. I think we've got a huge role to play in assisting people from a mental health perspective. So Jacqui, over to you. Can you tell us a little bit more on what is the kind of work that you do? Just to elaborate on that, please.
Okay, great. Thank you, Anna-Marie. Thanks for having me on the webinar this morning. I am an occupational therapist and I've got a practice in Blairgowrie and Randburg. And I've got 2 occupational therapists that also work with me. And together we look at focusing on clients with mental health conditions. So adolescents and adults that might be suffering from depression or anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, even if it's burnout or someone is just experiencing stress. That is really the main focus area that we have, and then obviously incorporating the sensory intelligence side with that.
Okay, just for those people who don't know, Blairgowrie is in Johannesburg in South Africa.
Yes.
There might be a lot of people not in South Africa that's hopefully listening to this session with you. So great stuff. So are you just with COVID-19? I know you've been also on maternity leave. You had a little baby. So based on your practice and what is happening through with your other therapists, have you seen an increase in people needing more mental health support? What have you been experiencing?
I think, like you said earlier, Anna-Marie, the times are very uncertain and people have had to undergo so many changes in their work environments, in their home environments. So we definitely are seeing an increase of people experiencing anxiety and a lot of stress, difficulties, managing all the responsibilities that they now have. Even in terms of setting boundaries, because now you're at work all day and you're working at home. So what are the boundaries really? So I think there definitely is a lot of pressure, and we are seeing that in the practice.
Okay. Yeah, we've also been experiencing that. I've also tried to keep my finger on the pulse, what's going on locally, globally. And obviously, we are, as I think from our professional perspective, I was concerned about mental health prior to COVID-19 because the trends and the statistics were showing that it's definitely increasing, and now it's literally kind of exploded with COVID-19. So Jacqui, just be a little bit practical. From our point of view, we use a much more of a health promotion approach. So anyone who's feeling stress or they need some really practical tools, we are in that particular space. But I know you guys dig a little bit deeper into one-to-one work or small group work where you actually then have more of a personal journey with your clients, where we do a lot more training in a group capacity. Share a little bit, what are the key things that people will benefit from if they would go through your practice or work with you and your team?
No, definitely. So, as occupational therapists, we look at a person's functioning in various areas. So that would include their socializing, how they function at work, their leisure performance, so what they do for enjoyment and relaxation, their ability to manage things around the house, so like the kids, the grocery shopping, budgeting, for instance, cooking. And someone with a psychiatric diagnosis can find these things very, very overwhelming. If we look at someone that has depression, for instance, it's not that a person's lazy, but it's just very, very difficult when your motivation isn't very good, you don't have good energy levels, you're tired all the time. So what we would do is we would look at those specific areas and help a person to manage better in those areas based on the difficulties that they're experiencing because of their diagnosis. So you might find that someone with depression finds it difficult just to get up in the morning and shower. And then we would start with them where they are currently at. So what are their current capabilities? So for instance, they might say, okay, well, I can shower, but I'm not going to manage to do makeup. And then we start with that and we walk that road with them where we say, okay, let's set our goal today that you're just going to shower, brush your teeth, and let's see where we go from there. And then we build on the routine from there. So it really is very practical, like you said, following a road with someone and walking that journey, but starting where they're at. Because it doesn't help. I try and help someone meet goals that is fully functional when they actually feel very down in the day, and doing a small task is actually very overwhelming.
I think I like that, because it's all being very practical, doing small little steps. It's like literally, how do you put one foot in front of the other? And Jacqui, my favorite question. I'm absolutely besotted with having goals, and I think whenever we work at anything, particularly with a one-to-one person, is actually putting really practical day-to-day, what we call activities of daily living goals in place for them. So I'm also assuming that you work with goals with people and that you keep track of where are they, and it's basically a bit of a partner and someone that walks the journey with you that actually helps you and celebrate those small goals and those small steps that you make. Am I right?
Yes, you're so right. We have to have goals to be able to measure what progress we've made. And like you said, it doesn't have to be a significant goal. It can be a goal that is really tailored to the person themselves. And what we often do is at the end of every week, we actually evaluate and say, okay, how did it go? Were you able to meet the goals more often than not? It's quite normal to not meet the goals every day. We're all human. Things happen. Sometimes things are crazy. But at the end of the week, let's say you're able to meet the goal 3 out of the 5 days, then that's great. And that will then enable us to decide, okay, can we now move on to a new goal, or do we still need to stay on what we're working on for the moment? And I find that by measuring those goals, people actually experience a sense of success and achievement. And it's so important, because that's what we want. Once someone starts seeing, oh, I'm doing this, I'm managing to actually do my hour of work in the morning, for instance, then they build that sense of confidence, and then they actually want to take on more. So it's so important that we set goals and measure them.
Okay, that's brilliant. That's always good for me to hear, because that's where evidence and practice come in, and we really making very sustainable, clear and measurable goals, or measurable change, and that's what's for us. Jacqui, your involvement with sensory intelligence, which comes quite a long time, why is this a good collaboration for you, and how has this benefited your practice and your clients?
Sure. I must say it's been hugely beneficial for me. Firstly, when I went on the practitioner's course, I gained a better understanding of my own sensory profile, knowing that I actually have a high threshold and I like stimulation, I like variety, but I still need the structure. And that was hugely beneficial for me, even in the way that I design my practice and my working hours. So that really helped as a starting point. And then I started using it with my clients. And, we often find that people with mental illness fall on the extreme. So they might need more input, or a lot more input than the average person. Perhaps they need more environments that are a lot noisier or busier, or they need a lot more change and variety. Or we could have someone on the other end of the spectrum that really is very sensitive to sensory information, and they need a lot less stimulation, a lot more structure and predictability. And I find just for clients to actually gain that insight makes a significant difference. Often they think, well, what is wrong with me? Why am I not like everybody else? And just understanding that this is actually a way that their brain is wired makes a huge difference. And then we're able to actually incorporate that in treatment. So as I mentioned earlier, as OTs, we would look at different areas of functioning. So for example, we might look at their leisure and look at how can we use their leisure as a stress management tool. And it's easy to just say, oh, you must go to gym. But not everybody is environment. I don't. But I really like walking my dogs. Because that has variety, it's nice to be outdoors. So if we can then use that knowledge as a foundation, I find it's so nice to direct therapy and give people more appropriate tools than just the stock standard, you need to work in a quiet environment, because that might not be what suits them.
I like that. The one size fits all approach in our world just does not exist, because
No.
all of them are different. I remember vividly when I worked with a group before, where husband and wife team working together in a design company, and the wife, young mother, 2 small children, was very much overloaded and was really set up like, I'm going to need to go to the gym and I'm not going to the gym. And after we've done her profile, I was telling her, gym is not the right area for you to move into. And then she mentioned that she loves art. So stop going to the gym or thinking you should be going to the gym. So let go of all that self-imposed pressure anyway. Rather go for art classes, because that's going to feed your system and that's going to truly be your benefit. Jacqui, and I can't help, but I have to share a little bit, and I think our time allows for it. The adolescent that you worked with, if you don't mind me sharing that, I'll obviously not divulge any personal information, but it was quite a sensory sensitive chap. I think he was 18 or 17.
About 16,
16, and didn't want to brush his hair, didn't want to bath, he couldn't cut his hair. So there was a real issue, and he only wore sweatpants. And then after you've worked with him and used some strategies, he actually started to shower by himself, washed his hair by himself, which his mother used to do, and dry his hair by himself, and he would wear jeans once a week, something like that. So it's small things, but quite radical changes that particular person and that adolescent experience, with understanding his level of discomfort to sensory input and how we can work with that in getting it better. And I know there's many case studies. I remember that was quite an interesting case study in the past.
Definitely. And, it might be, if you didn't understand his sensory profile, it would be easy to say, oh, this guy's just lazy, or, he's just not trying. But the parents had the insight to bring him to occupational therapy and dig deeper. And that made us realize that he was actually very tactile sensitive. So the feeling of wet hair on his skin was very overwhelming. And then he would just avoid showering and washing his hair. Even the feeling of cutting his nails felt very, I suppose one could say, distressing, or just made him go into sensory overload. Once we were able to look at desensitization, we actually use a brushing technique, where people might be familiar with that with children. There's a specific Wilbarger protocol that we use to actually brush against the skin, and that helps to desensitize the skin. And that really helped, together with some other strategies. So one can really get a lot of practical improvements with understanding how the person's sensory profile actually works.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Jacqui. I remember. So just for those guys who don't know, the Wilbarger protocol is very particular. It's a very specific therapeutic tool, and it should only be used by clinicians who really understand the process. So, but I just think that was a great guy with everything that you've also introduced with them. So I think that practical sharing really makes a lot of sense. I think, Jacqui, there was a little bit of disturbance on your Wi-Fi, so guys, forgive that. But hey, this is COVID-19. Everyone is online. And digital pathways are possibly seriously in digital overload. We are getting some of it, but we actually got the gist of it. So thanks, Jacqui. We really chuffed, and I know we've shared a lot of case studies where you've applied the Century Matrix is an assessment tool and then also incorporated as part of your therapeutic use. So
Yes.
that's really great. We love the work that you are doing. For
Mm.
a final bit, give us your gains from lockdown, or what have your experiences been from lockdown? What have you learned?
Well, I must say, like you said, I recently had a baby. So, my whole world is upside down having a baby, and really learned that it's so important to just be realistic. I'm the kind of person, I love to have a to-do list and I love to be able to tick all the things off and I feel so good afterwards. But I've really just had to learn that that's not always going to be possible. And, if it's every day where you're not meeting any goals, then obviously that's going to become a problem. But I've had to learn just to be kind to myself and say, okay, well, what are the priorities that I really need to get done today? Let me focus on that. If I get nothing else done, then that's fine. And I would really encourage people to do the same, because we can be really hard on ourselves and really feel like, we need to get as many things done as possible, but it's not always realistic. So yeah, that's from my side.
Great stuff. The thing that we're saying, it's okay to not be okay. And
Yeah.
Jacqui, interesting for any new mum. I'm an older mum now. I've got 19-year-old and 15-year-old, two boys. For any new mum, I would always say, I just have one piece of advice: lower your expectations. So while this is my number one advice for new mothers, I think this is my advice for anyone in lockdown and experiencing COVID-19 at the moment. I think we need to lower our expectations. I'm seeing a lot more authenticity out there. We are making the right changes. We are trying to be as resilient as possible, but it's okay to not be okay. And lower your expectations, do what you can do, and don't be so hard on yourself. I think that is really a critical message. Thanks for that one, Jacqui. And thank you so much for being associated with us and all your wonderful work that you are doing.
It's an absolute pleasure. I've loved being part of this.
Continue to support you, so keep up that wonderful work. And thanks for your time. I really appreciate that.